The hidden garden deep in the heart of a quiet village, nestled between the rolling hills, there stood a house that had been forgotten by time. The ivy-clad stone walls, weathered by years of rain and wind, were all that remained of its once grand presence. The house had stood empty for generations, whispered about in hushed tones by the villagers. Some said it was cursed, others believed it was haunted, but no one had dared to venture inside. Until now. Evelyn was new to the village. She had moved here from the city, searching for a fresh start after a series of personal tragedies. The village had seemed like the perfect escape, a place where time moved slowly, where the air was filled with the scent of blooming flowers, and where she could finally find peace. But as she settled into her small cottage on the outskirts of the village, Evelyn couldn't shake the feeling that something was calling to her. It was on a sunny afternoon, while she was wandering through the fields behind her cottage, that Evelyn first saw the house. The sun cast long shadows across the landscape, and there it was, half hidden behind a grove of ancient trees. Something about the house intrigued her, though she couldn't quite explain why. She found herself drawn to it, as if it held the answers to the questions she didn't even know she had. The villagers warned her to stay away from the old house. They spoke of strange lights that flickered in the windows at night, and eerie sounds that echoed through the empty halls. But Evelyn wasn't afraid. She had faced far worse things in her life than an old, abandoned house. And so, one crisp autumn morning, she set out to explore it. As she approached the house, Evelyn felt a chill run down her spine. The air around it seemed colder, and the wind whispered through the trees with a voice that was both familiar and foreign. The gate creaked as she pushed it open, and the overgrown gardens seemed to watch her as she made her way to the front door. It was a massive wooden door, intricately carved with symbols that she didn't recognize. Evelyn hesitated for a moment, her hand hovering over the doorknob before finally turning it. The door opened with a groan, and Evelyn stepped inside. The interior of the house was just as she had imagined, dusty and forgotten, with cobwebs hanging from the ceiling like delicate lace. The furniture was draped in sheets, and the air smelled of damp and decay. But there was something else too, a faint scent of roses, as if the garden outside had somehow crept inside. Evelyn wandered through the house, her footsteps echoing in the silence. Each room seemed more mysterious than the last, filled with relics of a past long gone. She found herself in what must have once been the library, a grand room with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, all covered in dust. As she brushed her fingers along the spines of the books, something caught her eye. In the corner of the room, almost hidden behind a curtain, was a door. It was small and unassuming, but something about it made Evelyn's heart race. She walked over to it and tried the handle. To her surprise, the door swung open easily, revealing a narrow staircase that led down into the darkness. Evelyn hesitated for only a moment before descending the stairs. The air grew colder as she went deeper into the house, and the scent of roses grew stronger. When she reached the bottom, she found herself in a small, dimly lit room. In the center of the room was a pedestal, and on it sat an ornate key, shimmering in the pale light. She reached out to touch it, and as her fingers closed around the key, she felt a sudden rush of energy. The room seemed to spin around her, and for a moment, she lost her balance. When the dizziness passed, Evelyn found herself standing in a garden. But this was no ordinary garden. The flowers here were unlike any she had ever seen. Brilliantly colored blooms that seemed to glow with an inner light, their petals soft as silk. The air was thick with the scent of roses, and the sky above was a deep twilight blue, though there was no sun or moon to be seen. It was as if she had stepped into another world. At the center of the garden was a fountain, its water sparkling like diamonds in the dim light. Evelyn walked towards it, drawn by a feeling she couldn't explain. As she reached the fountain, she saw her reflection in the water and gasped. The woman staring back at her was not the Evelyn she knew. Her hair was longer, her skin smoother, her eyes brighter. She looked younger, more alive, as if the garden itself had breathed new life into her. But it wasn't just her appearance that had changed. Evelyn felt different too, stronger, braver, more certain of herself than she had ever been. It was then that she heard the voice. "Welcome, Evelyn." She spun around, but there was no one there. The voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once, soft and soothing, like the rustle of leaves in the wind. "Who are you?" Evelyn asked, her voice trembling. "I am the guardian of this place," the voice replied. "I have been waiting for you." "Waiting for me? Why?" "Because you are the one who can restore the garden." Evelyn frowned. "Restore it? But it looks beautiful as it is." The voice sighed, a sound like the breeze through the trees. "What you see is only a shadow of what it once was. The garden is dying, Evelyn, and only you can save it." "Me? But how?" "By finding the hidden key, the one that will unlock the heart of the garden and bring it back to life." Evelyn looked down at the key in her hand. "Is this the key?" "No, that is the key to the past. You must find the key to the future." The voice faded, and Evelyn found herself alone in the garden once more. She looked around, searching for any sign of where the hidden key might be. But the garden was vast, and the key could be anywhere. Determined, Evelyn set out to explore the garden. As she walked, she noticed that the flowers seemed to wilt and fade the further she went from the fountain. The once vibrant colors dulled, and the air grew heavy with the scent of decay. It was as if the garden was slowly dying, its life force draining away. Evelyn knew she had to find the key, and fast. She wandered through the winding paths, searching every nook and cranny. She lifted stones, peered into bushes, and even climbed trees, but there was no sign of the key. As the hours passed, she grew more and more frustrated. What if she couldn't find it? What if the garden was doomed to wither away, and she was powerless to stop it? Just as she was about to give up, Evelyn noticed something strange. In the distance, at the very edge of the garden, there was a tree that stood taller than all the others. Its branches reached towards the sky, and its leaves were a deep, shimmering green, untouched by the decay that had spread through the rest of the garden. Something about the tree called to her, and Evelyn knew that she had to go to it. As she approached the tree, she saw that its trunk was covered in intricate carvings, similar to the symbols she had seen on the door of the house. But here they glowed with a soft golden light. At the base of the tree was a small hollow, and inside it, nestled among the roots, was a key. This key was different from the one she had found in the house. It was smaller, more delicate, and made of a material that seemed to shimmer and change color in the light. Evelyn reached out and took the key in her hand, feeling a warmth spread through her as she did so. The moment she touched the key, the garden began to change. The wilted flowers sprang back to life, their colors brighter than before. The air grew warm and fragrant, filled with the scent of blooming roses. The sky above turned a soft golden hue, and the fountain in the center of the garden glowed with a brilliant light. Evelyn felt a sense of peace wash over her, as if the garden itself was thanking her. She knew that she had done what she was meant to do. The garden was alive again, and so was she. But as she stood there, basking in the beauty of the restored garden, Evelyn felt a tug in her heart. This place, as magical and enchanting as it was, wasn't where she truly belonged. She had found the key, but now she needed to return to her own world. With a heavy heart, Evelyn made her way back to the fountain. As she stood before it, she whispered a quiet farewell to the garden, and then, with a deep breath, she stepped into the water. The world spun around her once more, and when the dizziness passed, Evelyn found herself back in the dimly lit room beneath the house. The key she had found in the garden was still in her hand, but the room around her felt different now. Warmer, more welcoming. Evelyn climbed the stairs and stepped out into the house. The dust and decay were gone, replaced by a sense of life and renewal. The scent of roses still lingered in the air, and as she walked through the halls, she noticed that the windows had been thrown open, letting in the sunlight. The house was no longer abandoned. It was alive, just like the garden. Evelyn left the house,